the closing act. Yeah. Johann Botha, I recently met Johann. He's really fantastic on the digital transformation side. And I'm going to hand over for him to just take us home. Thanks, Johann. Hello. Sorry, I think somebody needs to switch this mic on.
Yeah. Oh. Not that well. And now? Sorry. Awesome. So I'm a roamer. A podium is not my scene for style. Thank you for staying, number one. I'm honored. I'm going to talk a little bit about the issue of knowing what to do when you think about creating value for customers. And it may sound simple, but it's not. And you may know it's really complex, not complicated, but it's also not. So let me quickly take you through some of our experiences. Let me give you a little bit of background first. 2018, I was asked by a bunch of people in Europe to contribute to something, enterprise service management framework, called Verisum. And as part of that conversation, we needed to start talking about digital transformation. And eventually the conversation was about digital transformation and actually not about service management at all. But as we finished the second book, which we thought was a how-to book, we called it Verisum Unwrapped and Applied. People constantly say to us, this is really cool, there's some cool ideas, but how do you? Yeah, it's not, but yeah, it's sort of guidance. You have to figure it out. And then they say, nah, we want step 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. After hearing it about 50 times, I said, okay, what I'll do is I'll take some of my experience in the last 10 years, I'll codify it in one way that you can do it. But I quickly realized that you need to narrow it down quite a lot, and we use a very specific target audience. And this is industrial age, medium size leaders, to start the conversation and to frame it. Okay, so just some background. Welcome. Some of this, Sonia, no, what was the speaker just before her? I can't tell you where some of these stats come from, okay? But I'm quite sure they're true. I can say this is my experience, but most organizations, you know, they say we're innovative, but they don't really innovate. Oh, what I forgot to tell you is if you want to create a method, you must set some form of an anchor. The anchor was the audience, but you also must give direction. Yeah, it's like plotting a route. Yeah, and the direction that we chose was innovation. So that's why I say most organizations say they innovate, but they don't really. Yeah. What is interesting, though, is that organizations that we hold up to be examples of good digital citizens, if there's one thing that's common about them, is they're innovators. They're really good innovators. Who in the last year has had some form of an innovation initiative? Yeah, not a project. That's not what I'm talking about. Giving somebody the agency to come up with something entirely new that can maybe change your business. Anybody? Okay. I think I'm going to challenge you for the ESR count in the conversation. But most organizations who try to be truly innovative They will try it once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times, and then they can tell you, we're not good at innovating. We're not really innovators. We're good followers. We can follow the script and we can make it work, but yeah, we fail too often, and that's painful and not fun, quite honestly. And even when organizations say that they had a good idea, people validated that it was a good idea, they really struggle to make it commercially viable. So the challenges are mounting up. So quite a huge challenge to overcome. Okay. Thankfully, the pop-ups don't appear on your screen. Anyway, another interesting fact, and this is fact, unicorns, they spend a lot of time and money on innovation. Yeah, up to 22% of revenue, not profit. Yeah. One of the reasons why I think many organizations struggle to make innovation work is because they don't make it a priority. How do you make it a priority? You give it an agency, you give it money, you give it time, you put resources towards that. Yeah. And then the word digital transformation was used, I don't know how many times today. Can I tell you a secret? There's no such thing as digital transformation. Digital doesn't need to transform. It's organizations that need to transform. Yeah. And for that reason, many of these initiatives that fails are actually digitization programs. We're just using technology to solve an existing, not even to solve an existing, to automate something that we currently do. That's not digital transformation. George Westerman said that digital transformation is like making beautiful butterflies, not fast caterpillars. And many of these projects to me look like fast caterpillars. Okay, so that's a little bit of setting the scene. And I've told you about, where it came from. And so 2018, we started with research, trying things out, drawing on our past experiences. 2020, there was about, I don't know, nearly 20,000 pages of ideas. And then we spent a year to make it 100. I know, that's a lot, hey. It's a common problem for me. When I did my dissertation, I had the same issue. I tried to motivate that this is a new area that we're talking about, yeah, and I need more words. And the professor just said, no. Okay. So the target audience is people who are not technical, that realize that they need to make a change within the organization, and they're so afraid of this digital part of the name that they desperately just want to make it somebody else's problem. So it must be the CIO's problem. Or even worse, a large consulting organization or a technical vendor, even worse, comes to them and promises them they will transform their organization. Now, never in the history of transformation have I seen transformation done to somebody. Yeah, it always comes from inside. Yeah. Okay. The simple method that we put together, and it is a simple method and it's a high-level method, but it's still a method. The reason why it's a method is because I can say it's step number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, not 10. And it takes you about 3 months to actually go through those steps at a high level. Yeah? So that also implies that you can't really transform an organization in 3 months. So you have to do it again and again and again and learn some lessons and do it again. And eventually you will evolve into a different state, a different organization, something that looks different and behaves different. Okay, I did not do this on my own. There's a bunch of people that over the 5 years until the second book was published, was an input, and to my heroes, thank you for keeping me sane, and also for disagreeing with me. That helped a lot. Okay, so what does the 9 steps look like? There's 3 that's sort of strategic. I say sort of, because I don't know if it's only my experience, but I think most organizations aren't really strategic. They will tell you that they've got a strategy, but it's actually not so. In any case, you can't go away for a weekend once a year and have a lehotla and then think you've got a strategy for the next of the year. It doesn't work that way. Anyway, so first of all, focus. For me, focus is who we are, the purpose of the organization. And I think if you've got at least that, then you've got enough to keep you safe. Because when we are faced with choices, we can say, do our choice, does our choice, or are our choice, or this choice that we are about to make, is it in line with our purpose? So that's enough to keep you safe. The next thing that we need to understand is, especially from a product perspective, is, are what we're about to do something that somebody values and wants to buy or have? Is it going to help somebody? Do they also think that it would be helpful? If many organizations focuses on market analysis and then we spot this opportunity, but somebody once said to me, yes, there may be a gap in the market, but is there a market in the gap? But if we focus on the customer, then it's real. It's not simple, but it's real. The next thing that we need to then do is prioritize, because we will have lots of opportunities to explore. Then we go over into, let's call it more tactical, things that we need to figure out. But before we figure it out, we need to actually make sure that if we want to innovate, that we succeed at innovating. Innovation is a process that can, and therefore it can be taught. But innovation only works if you feel the participants within the process and you enable the process to be successful. If you don't expect it to work. So innovation foundations, that's what it's about. The next thing is about actually doing innovation. And we believe you can, and we've shown that you can. The next thing that you need to also understand is that just because it's a good idea doesn't mean it's a good idea for you. If it doesn't fit within the context of your organization, the way that you operate and so forth, and you're not willing to change the way that you operate, then it's not going to work. But let's give it a chance at least. Let's look at your business model and decide whether this is something that we need to explore. And then the last bit is about execution and scaling. So I'm not going to go through those in detail. So we're going to talk about these 3 steps at a very high level today. A lot of slides to go through, and I'll be quick because I know everybody wants to go home. So our approach is a customer-driven approach. We do use ideas from design thinking, but we also recognize that there are some challenges. And if you think about innovation, at least our view of innovation, there's sort of 5 different types of innovation. And the way that you approach each of these are slightly different. So although you'll find in our methods quite a lot of references to things like design thinking and design sprints and all that stuff, we've changed it. Somebody this morning said that there's nothing new out there. Adapt is not something new. It's the only thing that's new about it is the way that it's been put together. And it's not the only way that you can put it together. You can put it in tons of different ways. We just knows that this normally works. And the emphasis is on normally. And then we combine a bunch of other tools to figure things out. So why would customers buy our product? So let's quickly look at some theory. Theodore Levitt, 63, I think, said that customers don't buy drills, they buy holes. Yes. As a result, about a year later, Peter Drucker described Ted Levitt's work, and he said, you must bear in mind that a customer has got a job to be done, and your product or your service need to give utility. Incidentally, if I use the word product, I mean service also, because long ago, we used to have products which either were good-like or service-like, and then all of a sudden, somewhere in the mid-80s, it became two different things. I don't really think it is. So, at around about the same time, Everett Rogers also realized that people in the normal curve of the life cycle of a product, different people are willing to buy it and engage with products. And as a result, you need to actually approach your innovation problem in a slightly different way. And that's where the 5 types comes from. So we say type 1 innovation is a really true innovative innovation. Yeah, that's you coming up with an idea that nobody had to solve a problem that nobody knew that they had. That type of innovation is rare. And it also fails quite often, and quite often first mover advantage is not a thing there. Yeah. I can't remember who it was that mentioned Xerox PARC. There's a ton of things that came out of PARC, but Xerox was not able to exploit or to explore those. Type 2 innovation is you know that there's a market for stuff, but the people, so Clayton Christensen talked about non-consumption. So it's people want something, but they can't afford it because the products or services out there are too expensive, too complicated, not quite what they want. But if they had something simple, they will most probably buy it. Incidentally, that is what disruptive innovation is. It's disruptive because if you build that simple thing, maybe even worse, there will be a huge market that can actually use that. And even some of the existing fancy product customers will start using it. And that's why it's disruptive, because you take business away from the incumbent. Okay, I'm going to go to 4 first before I go to 3. So 4 is what most organizations do. They've got a product, they look at what the competitors are doing, they ask the salespeople, and as a result, they just add features and make it better. Yeah. But if you're clever and you look at who your customers are, you may recognize that there are some customers who bought your product and they are not the customers that you designed the product for. Yeah? I think it was Peter Drucker that says we quite often don't know what we sell to our customers. Yeah? And this is an opportunity because if you know that, you can go and innovate in that space and build something for those people specifically. Yeah. The cool thing is, just bear in mind, you know, if you take Rogers's model and later Geoffrey Moore, who identified there's a chasm here. The cool thing about type 4 or type 3 innovation is you innovate for people who are sitting on the right side of the fence. Yeah, they're pragmatists. Pragmatists don't buy stuff on this side of the fence because they think the people who buy it are chancers, chance takers, not chancers, sorry. But on this side, you're actually in safe company. And if you build something specifically for that niche, you've got a high level of, or high chance of success. The last type of innovation is not really product orientated, but that's us doing stuff to ourselves. Yeah, and we need to do that also. So here's a simple way of looking at which one of these responses are may be appropriate. Yeah. So if you're sitting with new products and new customers, then most probably you'll have to come up with something really cool, original. Yeah. But just bear in mind, high chance that it's going to fail. If you are sitting with new customers but existing products, then you can go and build a new product for the new customers based on what you've learned from existing customers or existing products. Never ever scale the product down. It's a bad choice, because then you bring all the bad history also with. Remember, the reason why people didn't want to buy that is because it's already become so complicated, because he kept on adding stuff, yeah, and make it bigger. Then type 3, new product, existing customer, and that's just sort of continual product improvement, and that's sort of continual, our own improvement, yeah. What we also very quickly recognized was that if you do something truly innovative, there may be a response from the rest of the organization who's saying, especially if you do type 2, who's saying, we're good at type 4, the type 4 product that we've developed, and now you want to compete with this thing that I'm making my yearly bonus on. Yeah, I don't want that. An innovation space is either a part of the organization that is allowed to use the resources of the organization, but not the constraints, and that means governance and control. I'm not saying there's no governance and control there, but it's a different set. Because what people do to attack it, the immune system will do to attack it, is they will say, yes, but you're doing something there, and that doesn't satisfy our investment criteria. So you can't do this. Yeah. Or some of the others that we've heard, we've tried this before, it didn't work. My favorite one is over my dead body. Incidentally, that can be arranged. The other thing that we also need to realize is the bigger the innovation, the more likely it is that our organization as it is today will not be able to fully exploit the opportunity. So we have to reinvent ourselves to be able to interact with our customers in a better way, in a new way, whatever is appropriate for that customer at that time. Yeah? So business model innovation becomes really important. So Henry Ford said that if he asked customers what they wanted, they would have told him faster horses. Yeah. So you may think that the best thing to do when you want to look for an idea to go and innovate is to go and ask customers what they want. The problem is customers don't know what they want. So who's in IT here? Who works in IT environments? Okay, you guys will know that well. Yeah, the customer only knows that they don't want it the moment you show it to them. Yeah, there must be a more reliable way to actually find out what it is that customers want. And the tool that we found that helps us to figure this out in the best possible way is something that's called jobs to be done. Peter Drucker, customer's got a job to be done. Okay, cool. There's a whole bunch of theory around jobs to be done. Just bear in mind, there's about 3 or 4 different approaches to jobs to be done. Don't assume anything that's said about jobs to be done applies to all of them. I think the only thing that applies to all of the approaches is the name. Yeah? The approaches are quite radically different. So choose one. We find that for people to begin, a more analytical approach is easier to consume. So the way that we handle it is more towards the objective-driven outcomes from Tony Anthony Ulrich. Yeah? But we made it simpler. Now, the cool thing about jobs is if you talk to the customer about the job that they need to do, you can do that without talking about the method that they use to get the job done or the technology that they use to get the job done. And that means that your job statement, your understanding of the job that needs to be done is stable over time. It doesn't matter what happens in the world of technology. We can use that same definition to reimagine what we do for customers at 5 years down the line when there's tons of other technologies out there. Yeah, and that's what makes it useful and meaningful. If you are then able to help the customer do that job and most probably related jobs better, faster, safer, the chances are that they're going to choose you over the competitor who can't. Yeah. And the more and more you do it, and the broader your reach is in terms of the related jobs, the less likely things like switching cost and loyalty will play a role. Yeah. Because it's just so obvious that this helps me so much in terms of getting my job done quicker. Yeah. So we find that jobs to be done is a good way for us to have a meaningful interaction with customers and understand what it is that they're trying to achieve, what is the outcomes that they want to achieve, and then work back. So we say, if that's the outcome, yeah, how are you going to get there, who's going to do it, and then we can have a conversation with the person that's actually doing the job. We call them the job performer. What happens in most organizations is that, especially if you're a third party and you need to do some development for a customer, you'll find a manager, maybe some middle managers, who's going to sit with a business analyst and tell you a bunch of things. And when you show it to the customer, even if you're very agile and you show it often, and that's the purpose of doing a sprint review, is to show stuff to customers soon, they're going to tell you, not quite, not what we want, not how we do things, not what works for us. But if you go and talk to the job performer, you'll have a better idea. Just bear in mind that jobs are never done in isolation. They're always interdependent, and there are dependencies. So that job mapping exercise is a really important one. How does it help you? Well, if you do that well, you're going to develop products that customers would want. And what we do as part of this, so from jobs for us leads to stories, high-level stories. We can then prioritize which of these things do we want to explore and exploit first. We can then prioritize, and we can then come up with new ideas by following the process. And once we've come up with an idea, we can go and show it to customers even before we build it. We can go and build a paper prototype, or a the little thing with the blockies that you use, wireframe, that thing, yeah. And you can show it to them, say, interact with it. Does it work for you? Is this what you want? Okay, I'm going to skip a few slides because we're running out of time. I think I've touched most of it. So what's important in terms of knowing and understanding jobs to be done? Yeah, who's doing the job? What is the job to be done? What's the process that they use to get the job done? And then the most important thing actually is, what are the needs of the job performer when they get that job done? Yeah, because if you look at the format of describing needs and outcomes, the agile people, does that look familiar? You can see that you can fairly easily change that into a job story rather than a user story. Yeah. So mapping jobs, two ways of doing it. We prefer to use the job interview rather than the switch interview. That talks about the physical thing that somebody's doing rather than talking about a choice that somebody made when they move from one product to another. What we also found that in every job has got a beginning and an end and something in the middle. But typically, there's about 9 sort of job stages that any job goes through. Yeah, and you can use any of those words. Doesn't mean that this job that you're busy mapping has got all of them, but it's a good indicator for you when you have the conversation is to say, okay, so what do you do right in the beginning? Yeah, and you can use words in your sentence like define, plan, or whatever, or in the middle, yeah, transact, use, or yeah. This is in dotted lines because not everybody has got that. Yeah, resolve, diagnose, typically an IT thing. So the original universal job map didn't have that in. We added it later. Then you can go and map your job. Looks familiar. Oh, something else that we do talk is we do talk to people about how they feel when they do the job and how people perceive them when they do the job. Not that it's going to change the job, but it may change how we define or develop a product to service their needs. Yeah. So those were the stickies at the bottom. Pure design thinking can be used for the more left-hand side of that curve that we showed you, the diffusion of innovation curve. But the more you move towards the real environment and working with pragmatists, the more you need to focus on the job. Okay. So what we've learned is that when we do or when we use design thinking, we start the process most of the time with a job mapping exercise, rather than imagining a bunch of stuff. Yeah, where you go away and you create a persona and you imagine stuff. It's not real. Yeah, find out, do the work. Yes, it takes longer, and yes, you can't do it without involving customers, but the results is going to be better. Yeah, so a better way of engaging. So how did we change the typical design thinking approach? You can see we don't empathize, we work with real data. Yeah, we understand. So that's the first big change. And the other one that we've done is we've actually built in on the solution side of the curve. Where's the little thing? Anyway, we built in validate. Yeah. So don't spend millions of rands on a project if you haven't spoken to real customers and asked them if this will fly. Yeah, it's a waste of time. In any case, if you do your job mapping and you go through the innovation sprint, it's about 2 weeks, and then you've got enough data to show to real customers, and they can say yes, no, or maybe. And if they're saying maybe, you ask them why, and then you can go through that process again. And by the time that you start designing and developing your product, you know that it's going to fly. Yeah. Okay, I'm not going to talk about the problem and solution space. IT people are typically really bad at this. So first, understand your problem before you try to solve it. And we've defined some rules around that. You can go and check that up on the internet because I've only got 5 minutes left. The rules that we set, and we set it as heuristics, guardrails. Yeah, never mix the problem in the solution space.